Friends and enemies, welcome back. Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. Big week this week, obviously. Davos men, the bug men gathering in Davos, Switzerland for the WEF conference. Our guy Mark talking about how nostalgia is not a strategy. Our guy Donald talking about how he's tired of Canada not being grateful and Europeans showing up. I mean, on the defensive, probably an understatement, but we're going to get into all that with a friend of the show, corporate sponsor, and chip and dip aficionado, Mark Jeftovic. As always, though, the intro. Hang in. So, the government can say whatever they want about this thing not competing. It's for black market only. It's for this, for that. But they're really treating it like a threat. And one of the things that can't be attacked is your self-custody Bitcoin. And one of the things that can be attacked is the ETF. You can't be exposed to that. That's my view. It's not a good idea. And by the way, that'll hit MSTR too. It'll probably hit other stuff as well. Friends and enemies, welcome back. Canadian Bitcoiners podcast.
Friends and enemies, welcome to the CBP. Wanna be better informed? Listen to Len and Joey. Spots is taken care of right off the top. Oh, Bitcoin and easy DNS. The media is feeding the slop.
Mark, it's another day for the Davos men. The bug men are doing their thing in their expensive suits. You think they're eating bugs at the lunches, by the way?
The bugmen of Davos? Absolutely not. Do you remember, it wasn't Davos, it was COP26. I was actually able to get a copy of the menu for the article I wrote that year. And that was the year they were talking about meat and methane, right? Meat is methane. And that was the narrative was suddenly like CO2 is tired, methane is wired, cows fart a lot. You're going to have to take away your cows. And the menu was like Scottish haggis, like Wagyu steak, grass fed. Like it was the absolute opposite of a minimal carbon thing. I'm going to turn off the overhead light because the top of my bald head is like so.
We'll get into all that stuff except for Mark's bald head, but we should talk about the sponsors. Mark is obviously one of them. Easy DNS, the friendly neighborhood registrar. I mean, I don't know what to say, Mark. I've said everything I can about you over the years. If it hasn't been mentioned on the sponsor read for Easy DNS, then someone's talked about it alongside penicillin or the wheel. Okay,
whatever you do say, you may not use the word easy when you say it from now on.
Okay. I thought we weren't talking about that, but we'll save that for another time. If you guys don't know already, you ought to be using Mark for all your DNS needs, your registrar needs, and also comedy here on a Friday or a Wednesday night, I should say, at 7:00. If you are a Bitcoiner, Mark will take your Bitcoin for his services, which, by the way, he was never doing that just to be cool. He was doing it many years before it was cool, in fact, and has held onto that Bitcoin for a long time. The original Bitcoin treasury company, not to mention, if you want to do virtual private server stuff over there, you can do it. You want to have an email on your new website, you can do it. You want to protect your data and your customers' data, easy mail, domain share. He's got you, man. Mark, what's the code? CBP Media, half off your first round of buys if you go there. I mean, you can't beat that. Right. Can't beat that. And then the second sponsor is Bull Bitcoin. You should be buying. I don't know what else to say. Francis and the team expanded to Colombia the other day. Just like, just a standard Monday morning announcement from the best exchange in the game. And those guys are continuing to build, continuing to meme, and continuing to destroy the competition. I don't know why you wouldn't be using them, but if you're not, start. CBP's our code there. You get 25% off your fees if you use our code, which you don't get anywhere else. I always tell my friends to use the code. One person or two people doesn't really move the needle for us, but that 25% will move the needle for you big time, long term. And then obviously Twan over 256 heat. There's a new iteration of the hash eater coming out, I think next month. We saw a picture of it today, Mark, Len and I, and it looks sick. Fully contained, 3D printed, modular, I guess, in a sense, and only a couple bucks more than the one that I have running in the corner near me. So go there, tell Tom we sent you. You get like 5% off, I think, or 10% off. I don't know exactly what. And once you get one, you won't stop. So tell your wife to expect a package every 6 months as you continue hashing. I pulled a bunch of stories for today, like thinking about what we're going to talk about. But I think maybe we should start with the Carney speech that is getting parroted and celebrated, and whatever else, whatever other term you want to use in the mainstream media here. Nostalgia, not a strategy. The New World Order is done or is starting. We can no longer rely on America. Sort of in the same vein, by the way, as Macron, who gave his speech talking about how the sort of, powers that be in NATO and the G7 shouldn't be intimidated by the bully in the room. Let me hear your thoughts, man. Obviously, you've thought about it. We went for lunch on Monday before some of this stuff was said, and since then, there's been some new info.
So I have a nearly unblemished record of not having listened to a single speech by Mark Carney, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, and Klaus Schwab, and whoever else. Schwab's not even there anymore. But you can't avoid the highlights, right? And the term New World Order is such a front-loaded, like supercharged word that it's got to send a message. And the funny thing is when you get this sort of tough talk out of Pipsqueak Canada, because we really are just kind of like a joke of a country. So when Canadian leaders and Canadian followers on social media talk tough, and it's just it's surreal to watch. And the thing is, like, Donald Trump, he kind of sounds unhinged a lot to me every time he talks in his Truth Social posts, but he's never boring. You could even say he's a great speaker, right? Because he holds the room. Mark Carney has got to be the least charismatic entity on earth, right? He's like he makes Ignatieff sound like an unhinged maniac.
What a callback there. Yeah, what a callback.
Yeah. And he put me to sleep when he talked. And Carney is like even less interesting than that. He can't even talk.
The frustrating thing, the frustrating thing is that, and I'll mention that Dasha Nekrasova, who's one of the co-hosts of the Red Scare podcast, super popular, like pop culture podcast on the right, I would say, although they may disagree, tweeted that Mark Carney wants so badly to be Hugh Grant from Love Actually and just can't land the plane. I had not thought about that. Stockwell Day was on this show in the summertime and said said that on a plane one time, Mark Carney was telling people that he thinks he looks and sounds like Bond, which
but Daniel Craig specifically.
Is that what he said? Is that what I said?
Daniel Craig.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, he couldn't pull a Roger Moore or a Sean Connery.
No.
Give me a break. But
definitely not. I listened to the speech a little bit, and I've seen some of the commentary. I mean, sort of predictably, I guess, in Canada, there's a huge section of the media that loves the speech and is, repeating the rhyme of this is one of the best speeches any leader has ever given at any time. It's a pivotal moment for Canada. Guys like Bruce Arthur talking about how conservatives just don't get it. They're living in a bubble. Bruce Arthur, by the way, only employed thanks to tax dollars coerced from my pocket, supporting Torstar, him and his colleagues, the fake thought leaders.
Everything you see on social media. I'm sorry, I jumped in.
You're the guest, Mark. You're free to do that. People have heard enough of me.
All of the horrible, just the stuff on social media that just kind of makes either my eyes glaze over or my blood boil. You look at the bio and it's like they're either 1 or 2 degrees removed from the public purse. They either are a policy wonk, and that policy institute has one client, the Liberal Party, or they're a consultant, or they work for a public utility or the public health system or the public school system. Like, they all are living on our taxpayer dollars and talking down to us like we're imbeciles all the time.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And then on the right, you have guys like Brian Lilly and others. Obviously, Ezra Levant making his presence felt at Davos now that Freeland and Trudeau don't have full security details. So uncomfortable. I got it. Like, I don't know Ezra Levant. I've never had him on the show, but he's like following Trudeau and Freeland around, huffing and puffing. Ezra, buddy, you got to get your VO2 max up if you're going to do these like man on the street interviews with people who are walking and who are, I suspect like quite a bit taller than you. Their stride is a little bit, difficult to contend with. Something to think about. Anyway, I want to know what you think about this whole New World Order thing. I have it in the thumbnail. I have it in the title. And I think it's important because it was, Mark, you could say for sure over the last 20 years. And even when I asked my AI bot, Like, give me some of the details around this new world order from the Davos meeting so far. The first thing it says is, don't call it that. It's inflammatory. And here I am talking to you. Yeah, true.
I'm just quoting the prime minister.
Yeah, exactly. This is what they're saying now. It's not me saying it, right? It's no longer just like a backroom cigar smoking, leather couch type term or phrase. This is what the powers that be are calling it. So what am I supposed to make of this? My personal view is that the New World Order is just an admission that there was no order the whole time. and like Carney kind of said that today to his credit, or yesterday to his credit, but this is the admission, right? We can't rely on the United States. They're no longer a rational actor. I would say that you're pretending they're not rational anymore because, as I've said many times, the rational choice is no longer participation in this global system. And the US is making that decision for themselves and for their people. They're doing it with regard to Canada. They're doing it with regard to Greenland. They're doing it with regard to Europe. And maybe most importantly, in terms of signal, they're doing it with regard to every public appearance that any elected official makes. Rubio, Trump, and then the unelected guys like Bessent and Lutnick saying the same thing. Bessent and Lutnick pasting Europeans yesterday and Monday. Today, even guys like Brian Armstrong pasting central banks in Europe.
I love that.
He's right. The central banks, like central banks and governments are really causing problems all around the world. And so the US, again, my position on what the quote unquote New World Order is the US is done pretending that they need to have anyone else's interests in mind but their own. They're correct in that strategic pivot. Do I have that right? Where do you come down?
I think so. There is an existential struggle coming or in progress between the United States and China. I mean, that's just really what's happening, right? It's what do you call it? What's the Greek word? The Thucydides trap?
Yeah. I think you told me about that a little while ago.
Was it? So, and I'm going to make up the numbers because I don't have them memorized, but the guy who wrote that book, Thucydides, the guy who wrote the book said, there's been 20 of them in the past 1,000 years, and like 14 or 16 of them resulted in a war. I think any rational actor on either side, anywhere in the world, is kind of hoping to get it. Like, let's hope it stays 16 out of 21, instead of 17 out of 21. Like, if we can get through whatever geostrategic game is playing out right now without a war, without a shooting war, that's a win. Right. And then so for a country like Canada, I mean, on one hand, me, I'm a DNS guy. We love redundancy. We love multiple everything, right? Like backups on backups and not putting all your eggs in one basket. So doing trade deals with Europe. Yeah. Okay. How about selling them LNG when they came begging for us to sell them LNG? When Germany came in 2000 and whatever the year was, 24, asking for LNG, why didn't we do that deal? Instead of telling them that it's bad for the environment, and they went and did a deal with Bahrain instead. So there's like these rational deals we could be cutting. We could be, selling energy to Europe so they don't have to buy it from the Russians. But there's this reality, like this idea that we can drop in, replace Europe as a trading partner for the United States is delusional. And the idea that we can cozy up to China without sacrificing intelligence, security, or autonomy is also delusional, because that's not the way the Chinese play the game.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I will add some additional firepower to those points. Europe talking about how it's important to spread the wealth, I guess, around your different trading partners, vis-a-vis the United States and their newfound, less than reliable stance on global trade and globalization. By the way, these policies have failed. I think most people would agree with that, but here we are. Europe spent the last 4 years, even through the war with Ukraine, buying Russian oil. Yeah. So, they couldn't, not only did they not differentiate, but there's an argument to be made that they couldn't. And even if they could, they wouldn't, because they've done so much damage to their energy grid otherwise, because of, through closing nuclear facilities and adding red tape and outsourcing most of their policy to like a, schizophrenic SSRI addicted 15-year-old who now is like pivoting to Israel-Palestine conflict, I guess, as a career choice. Good for her. But now they're left holding the bag on the Greta, the Greta doctrine. And they've shown so far an inability to change and make good decisions, even though I should say, unlike the former chancellor of Germany, the current chancellor admitting that there was not only just a strategic mistake, but also a socioeconomic mistake to close those plants. Fine, that's one thing. On the other side, you mentioned Canada trying to differentiate its relationships in terms of trade from the United States. The problem is that the United States is the best trading partner, both in terms of geography and in terms of shared culture. Hold your tomatoes, elbows up, people, but Americans and Canadians share so many of the same wants and needs because we share a similar geography, a similar ethnic history, similar racial history. You're going to see people the same color there as you see here. You know what I mean? There's not going to be any special differences or any weird enclaves or anything like that. And so that trading relationship, the reason that it's become cliche to say that America and Canada are good trading partners is because, like any cliche, Mark, it's been around long enough that everyone is saying it and believes it, and that's how things turned out to develop. I don't understand how anyone in Canada looks at the current situation, the pieces on the board, and goes, we're gonna not only differentiate away from the States, but it looks like we're not even gonna go to Europe that much. We're gonna go to China and India. Like there's huge, like the geography aside, which, like, obviously, if you've ever played Risk, okay, you can't go to India from Canada in Risk. You can't go from India to Canada in Civilization 7. It can't be done. Why? There's huge bodies of water, tons of risk, tons of cost associated with all that. And so that's difficult enough. But then when you mentioned the Chinese thing, Mark, we're like 7 or 8 months removed from Mark Carney saying, I guess more now, time is flying, maybe a year removed from Mark Carney saying, then candidate Carney saying that China was the biggest strategic threat to Canada. Okay. You're probably 2 or 3 years removed from every day a story about the 2 Michaels being recovered from China who were nabbed. You're probably about the same time away from the Huawei 5G bidding scandal that almost landed on our borders. You have sitting MPs and their families under attack from Chinese, quote unquote, community police office. Why is there Chinese community police establishments in the GTA? I'll tell you why. Because they have influence over the politicians and the politics of this country. And if you doubted it before, you can't doubt it now. You simply can't.
Yeah. The other thing about the proximity and the culture, mesh between Canada and the US, like, Greg Foss always liked to point out that 90% of Canada's population lives within like 100 kilometers of the border, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, what I always add on to that is that I don't know a single Canadian family, whether they're like first, second, third, fourth generation, that doesn't have relatives, right?
Yeah.
And friends in the US. Like, I just don't know a single family that doesn't have American kinship ties.
Yeah.
Like, that's just kind of so baked in. And then when I see a post on like X or wherever of like, yeah, I'm a 71-year-old soccer mom and I do
osteoarthritic, one fake hip.
Yeah, and I do
ready.
like 300 squat burpees a day, and I have a 45 cal, and I'm gonna fucking fight the Americans. It's like, except my cousin, right, and my sister-in-law and my brother's nephews. Like, I won't shoot at them when they come across the border, right? Because it'd be impossible to sort out. Like, you can't shoot across the border and not hit Canadian relatives, right? And vice versa. And plus, it's so delusional that we're even debating this. That is actually not even how
do you think
America would annex Canada anyway.
So do you think that there's any truth to this story that's coming out of outlets like the CBC, CTV, the usual places, about our military discussing war games where the U.S. crosses our southern border and tries to take us over? By the way, this is what sparked a lot of the
military
debate. Yeah, this is
our land acknowledgements and tampons in the men's bathroom military.
That's the one, man. Yeah. I just wonder. 16 years to do a basic procurement, 50 to do a complex one, according to some reports. Crazy stuff. But the thing that raises eyebrows for me and makes me laugh is this is where these surveys started to come out about, would you pick up arms to deal with an American invasion? like, I don't know what Canadians take those polls. Like, no one's calling me about that, but I mean, the landlines where they do get, grandma and grandpa to pick up, they're answering these questions, and they're saying, look, I would definitely take up arms to battle with America. And yeah, I think we could give America trouble. And Bruce Arthur, again, not to bring him up, but he's like truly delusional, talking about how we would be a woodsy Vietnam for America. These people are stupid, right? They're either stupid or uninformed or some combination of the two. I'll give you the reason why. Like you mentioned, 90% of the population lives, next to the radiant heater there on the southern border. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, we have two basically cross-country travel options. One is a rail line, and one is the 400 highways that turn into other highways going across provincial borders. Guess where they are, Mark?
Yeah, they're like right along the.
They're right, like there's no transportation of troops or vehicles. There's no transportation of supplies. There's not, like, once they make it 100 kilometers into the country, it's over, and that's all there is to it.
They wouldn't even have to do that, Joey.
I know.
All they would have to do is they would have to go to two network access points in the United States, May East and May West, and they would say, turn off everything going up to Canada. Turn on, drop all the announcements for Canadian BGP space. Just shut off all the Canadian, don't broadcast, don't rebroadcast Canadian IP space. Stop the transit to the Canadian networks. They would basically decouple from the Canadian internet, and that would be it. Like, that would basically be it. It'd be 9 meals from anarchy, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Our economy would grind to a halt within 3 or 4 days. And by day 7, these people who say they would stick it to the Yanks would be eating their neighbors' dogs because they don't know how to prepare or go through hardship.
Totally. And I also think what I might do is get an American flag ready so I can put it on my garage or something to greet my liberators with open arms. I don't know what I do. There's the commentary today. This came up in the past as well. I think we talked about it on CBP, maybe not you and I, but Len and I did, about how one of the other options for America is just to offer a passport to anyone.
Swap, yeah.
It's like very simple, right? If they just a one time, we will give you up to $500K or $1 million, a 1-to-1 USD to CAD currency match. You come over with your business and your family, and as long as you have the money to buy a house, we'll take you. And like that would get everybody, including me, probably including you. I think
there would probably be some pretty hastily enacted exit taxes.
For sure. That's where Bitcoin comes in. We can talk about that too. But let's move on to our friends. I mean, I'm still calling them our friends in the South, Donald and the boys talking today. Trump went for almost an hour and a half in a sort of winding, rambling Trump style speech. I tried to watch the whole thing. I ended up kind of, going in and out of it. My daughter was sick today, so I was off of work taking care of her. And she's not as into the foreign policy stuff as I am. So I was going in between that and we were watching Tom and Jerry, which is on YouTube for any parents out there who don't want their kids to be watching Blue's Clues or whatever.
Probably a bit more highbrow.
Tom and Jerry's great. It's a good cartoon. Anyway, so I'm listening to him talk, and again, he's basically reiterating stuff that he said during the Iran strike, during the Venezuela strike, or extraction. That's mentioned in their few months old now foreign policy document, saying, look, the top of the Southern Hemisphere is our territory. It's not NATO territory. It's not European territory. It's not, it's not meant to be defended as a team or as a group. We are going to be in that territory unilaterally. And he got some laughs out of the audience when he asked if they wanted to hear him talk about Greenland and when he was talking about some of this stuff. And then obviously the Europeans celebrating today on Twitter, including some of the guys who were at Davos, saying it's good that Trump backed off the tariffs for people who were in Greenland, talking to the Greenland authorities. It shows that working together has an effect on him, blah, blah, blah. And then an hour later, the news release came that they had reached a deal on Greenland. They will be establishing military bases there. They'll be getting part of that land. And the Americans get yet another deal done under the guy who wrote the book, ostensibly, and maybe also literally and figuratively as well. So what do we think about the Trump 2 doctrine so far? And Does this stretch to Canada if we become a Chinese vassal state? This is the thing that I want to get out of you. I know we talked about it a bit on Monday, but it's time to do it for an audience.
I mean, it's kind of bombastic and almost hyperbolic to talk about Canada, or is it, as a Chinese vassal state? The Chinese police department have police departments here.
We are a vassal state. The question is, whose vassal state are we?
Yes, I mean, and you know, there's undue influence from India, from China. There's certainly economic and financial and undue influence from America, just historically, from Britain. You know, I mean, you could say that like Mark Carney is a City of London creature installed at Sussex Drive, right? So, you know, it's funny because I've been working on a piece. I've been so distracted with like other things lately that I haven't had a chance to really flesh it out. But it's the punchline is like, Canada has never been sovereign. Like the fiction of Canadian sovereignty is a tale we've been telling ourselves from the very beginning, but we never have been, right? We've always, I mean, we were a dominion until 1984, like 1983,
67.
No. It was until
Yes. Different thing entirely. Yeah.
So we were still a dominion until then, right? It's so I grew up, maybe because I was brainwashed like everybody else. I grew up fiercely patriotic, and I used to be like rabidly anti-American. Like I used to say, the only country I would pick up a gun and go fight against would be the American invasion. And like, but this is how you think when you're a 20-year-old drug addicted, alcoholic loser.
Piss and vinegar too, right?
Right. And it's like, okay, so that's how you think. You're not really rational. You kind of make your way in the world. You put a real life together. You build a real business. You sort of see the economic integration between the countries. Like I said, even like my daughter is American. So like, what am I going to do? Like carp on her because she's an American every day of her life? Like, oh, you fucking orange man, bad, go away, you know? So my thinking on it has changed so much, but the idea, the realization really is that Canada has never been sovereign, and we have always been sort of like a chess piece in the machinations between like the Milner Round Table kind of crowd from out of England and sort of like the American independence movement. Like, you know, do many Canadians know that Ben Franklin came to Quebec around the Declaration of Independence trying to get like Upper and Lower Canada to come in with them?
No.
Yeah, it was like he thought it was natural that we should throw in with the original colonies for the Declaration of Independence. There's a guy, what's his name? Mark Arrett. He's got a ton of books. I've got like 5 of them over there. I barely made a dent in it. And his wife, Cynthia, I want to say Young. It could be incorrect. They're putting out content like crazy, right or wrong. I showed one article of Steve Bannon once, and he said she's CCP, plain as day. But you know, but they do a great job of digging out this esoteric history of Canada, and whether they're right, whether they're influenced, whether they're looking at it through Beijing tinted glasses, I don't think they are. If anything, they seem more American aligned. But you realize that, like, we've never been independent.
I love this take.
An identity. There's just really, we have to choose the real politic of our day in this new era, right, of great power contests, of which we are not a great power. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just plain as day.
Well, Carney's up there saying that, right, that we're a middle power. I do agree with this. This idea we've never been independent. I would say not independent socially, not independent economically. Like we are slave to the 3 M's, as I like to say. I've been using this term more and more with my friends that, you know, when America shows up on your doorstep with rifles and tanks, okay, you're thinking about the rifles and tanks, but you're also thinking about the 3 M's. You know what the 3 M's are? Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, and McDonald's. And these guys, like the 3Ms are the true like 1,000-year empire cultural export that only the United States has ever managed to pull off in the modern age. You know, the Romans did it with some things like their architecture and their art, but no one is pulling off 1,000-year worldwide cultural exports like the US. So to say that we are independent, I think is plainly wrong. And when people say Canada does have an identity and it's a strong one, I would just point to, you know, probably our greatest cultural export, Gretzky, if I had to say. He takes a couple of pictures with Trump on a golf course and he's persona non grata. How tight was that? How tight was that bond? Really? The bond you have is one that is, it's superfluous in a lot of ways. It's ethereal in a lot of ways. It's something you imagine, but when someone asks you how to quantify it or point to it, you can't. The only thing you can say is we're not the USA.
Yes.
And that
exactly.
ain't enough. That ain't enough.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that there is some cultural distinctions between Canada and the US. You could make that argument, right? Like the entire country has winter here and not so much in the US.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that sort of puts a certain kind of, I don't know how to say, distinguishing characteristics around us, whatever. It's why our kids are born on skates and we play hockey and all that stuff. But yes, the thing is, the cultural domination of America is not just, it steamrolled not just Canada, it steamrolled the entire world, Europe included. They may all speak a different language over there, but they all have McDonald's. They all watch Hollywood movies. They all, you know.
Look at the NHL and NBA. How many Euro guys are in those leagues now? Those are, you know, North American predominantly sports, specifically pro basketball. And yet the NBA MVP is Yugoslavian. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like tell me again how your culture is so tightly knit and so difficult to permeate. And here you are.
Yeah.
You know what we should talk about too is since we're talking about kind of, you know, independence and things of this nature, it's a good segue into what's going on between Federal Reserve, Bank of Canada, European Central Bank, and their respective economies, countries, governments. This is a strange time for arm's length. I'm using that term very loosely. Arm's length institutions like central banks. I think we agree on this, but I'll share my point of view and then you can share yours. I don't think any central bank is necessarily independent. I certainly don't think they're apolitical. Central bank chairs, specifically in the US and Canada, are appointed by governments of the day, and rarely will the government of the day appoint someone who is going to be a friction point for them. They'll appoint somebody who's going to be a tailwind instead. Nothing wrong with that. That's the expectation, same as in the Supreme Court and in the Senate and all this other stuff. I don't have a problem with that. But there's always been this curtain of arm's length independence from these agencies and institutions when it comes to stuff like interest rates and, you know, monetary policy and whatnot. And I wonder if that veil is going to disappear in Europe and in Canada as fast as it disappeared in the United States over the last 5-6 months. And the reason I ask is because if we are truly in a fourth turning type situation where governments are going to find they're dealing with social unrest, economic issues, they're obviously having trouble on the sort of currency, value retention side as well. Is it then the case that what we're going to wind up seeing is governments use all the tools at their disposal to try and retain power and retain calm? And obviously, you know, these days, Mark, is there any bigger tool than the central bank in these modern nations? I don't think so. I think in terms of keeping the average person, the person who you would never see on the margins of a social uprising, keeping that person satisfied, fat, and happy, the central bank plays a huge role in that. And right now they're having a hard time because they have to maintain this veil of independence and this veil of, we're not going to do everything we can to support this government, but we'll do some things here, some things there. Is everyone going to go the way the United States is going? Powell's out in 3 months and Trump is tweeting names. He's tweeting interest rates that are going to be coming. It seems to me like everyone's going to be doing this because they're going to have no choice if they want to compete.
There's so much in there. I mean, in the US specifically, I've been calling it a civil war between the Treasury and the Fed for, 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
There's a battle there, right? The Fed was perhaps the tail that wagged the dog for its entire history. And, maybe, the old expression, you come at the emperor, you better not miss. And Trump got back in for his second term. So, so maybe he, especially because Powell has committed the sin of not lowering rates fast enough. So, he's got Besant in there, and Besant is, he's sort of doing even stealth QE from the Treasury, right? There used to be this simpatico between the Treasury and the Fed, like when Yellen was there, and who was the guy? No, she went to Treasury, and then there was Powell in the Fed, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of like would ping pong back and forth and sort of like sneak in extra liquidity here on one side, pull it out on the other side, that kind of thing. Now it's a war, and it leads to, well, two things. I hope I don't go rambling all over the place.
No, please.
One is, and I've been talking about this in the last couple newsletters, we are headed for a world of, by different names in different places, government capitalism, right? Command economy, the fusion of the corporation and the state, which is actually Mussolini's definition of fascism, right? In China, it's like, communism with capitalist characteristics or whatever they call it. And in the States, Zero Hedge called it the White House asset management, program. And so that's what's happening. And I think the Treasury is who is taking the lead on that. And to come to your point about how you keep the rabble in line, right? The Fed, and I was commenting on this for years, the Fed seemed ambivalent to CBDCs and behind the curve on CBDCs. And CBDCs and UBI are inevitable. And Trump ran on no CBDCs. There's even the executive order that says no CBDCs, which is all fine and dandy, because if the Treasury comes out with their own system, it's not a CBDC, because the Treasury is not a central bank. They're the Treasury. So if you come out with a Treasury digital currency, which is probably going to be baked in to the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, the stablecoin standard, I call it, right? That's where you start to get your rails, and you're seeing these other things like digital ID and health passes and all of this stuff, and it's all going to run on top of stable coins and digital rails. Hey, it's not a CBDC because it's not being done through the Fed. But this is also going to happen everywhere out of necessity. And what I think I misjudged over the years was I thought national governments and the state were becoming weaker and weaker and on the verge of completely imploding. And that could still happen, because the next financial crisis could be the last financial crisis of this financial system. But I think there's so much riding on it that there will be this will to keep the system on the rails, and that will be expressed through government control of the economy, right? So that's why the stock market is never going to crash again on this side of the fiat reset. I mean, I listen to a lot of people who I respect enormously, like financial commentators, maybe outside of the Bitcoin space, who have decades of experience and they're seasoned and they just have this depth of knowledge, and they're saying, yeah, we're going to get a 70% drawdown on the S&P. No, we are not. That is never going to happen, because it's game over if it happens. It's literally Mad Max. So you're going to have the government saying the stock market is not going to fall because we are ordering every pension fund to buy sovereign debt, S&P 500, AI companies, data centers.
They do this already through consulting, right? Consulting firms that run investment strategies for endowments and other large institutional investors under the guise of safety and volatility minimization, which is obviously guided by some invisible hand, we'll call it, just to keep in keeping with the communist themes here and the Soviet command economy themes. Someone's telling them to do this. Nobody would buy treasuries.
Who in their right mind would buy treasuries?
No. So this is already happening, right? And I like this idea of the U.S. command economy. It's already kind of happening.
Yeah. I mean,
They're
totally.
they're buying AI companies, they're buying
Yeah.
chip companies, they're investing in other companies onshore, and not to mention that they're also instructing military companies how they can and can't spend their revenues.
Yeah.
So you have this stuff going on now that never happened before. And I agree with you. When I talk to people about the stock market dipping, they all say the same thing. Oh, it's all cyclical. It's this, it's that. I'm not saying there can't be a 20% drop, but a 70% drop nukes pensions, nukes housing, nukes the entire economy and sends people into a tailspin. There's already the problem is the sort of static level of desperation is never as high as it is right now. It's not 2008 again. It's not 1999 again. It's not 1987 again. Times are not really good right now. The market is really good, but times are not really good. And that little bit of that little bit of a change there between the static desperation level of those eras and the static desperation level of today, the stove is already hot. You don't want to turn the gas up anymore if you can avoid it. And the stock market, at least in nominal terms, pretty easy to keep that thing floating.
Well, and let's not confuse that by saying that they're rationally valued, because they're not. They haven't been rationally valued in 20 fucking years.
Totally.
Right. But when you look at where were interest rates, where was the debt levels, where was the money supply back in 2000, back in 2008, and where are they now, especially since COVID? It's like, yeah, we have no margin for error. Like, this puppy cannot go down, so we have to debase the denominator. I always said it's the denominator, stupid, right?
Yep.
It's not that the stock market is going up. The denominator is disintegrating, and that is not going to stop. You would throw the world off its axis if you tried to stop that.
Yeah, I mean the printing is coming now. Larry, obviously, Lepard, for people who are watching, wrote this book, The Big Print, that I'm kind of picking through a little at a time. And he's got a lot of good data in there saying, look, no matter how big you think the bazooka that's coming is going to be, it's going to be much bigger. And this is a good place to transition to what we're seeing in terms of fire alarms. Luke Groman says Bitcoin's a good fire alarm. The thing is not working right now. That I would like for it to be working, but it's not. But what is working, Mark, is gold and silver. And gold for the third day in a row, 2 points, basically at the open every single night for the last 3 nights. This is unheard of for people who don't realize. Len and I talk about gold a little bit here and there, and we joke about it. But what people don't realize is every 2 or 3% move in gold is one whole Bitcoin market cap. The whole thing is like a 2 or 3% move.
Excellent.
Tons of new capital. It's not just a theme that makes a 2% move go in gold. It's like every government in the world adding to their stockpile at once makes it go. $1 trillion US dollars per 2 or 3% move. Where do you come down on the move in metals? Is it related to economic conditions? Is it related to people losing faith in treasuries? Where do you come down on? Have you thought about it at all?
It's all the same trade. It's the debasement trade, right? And for years, right, Bitcoin, silver, and gold. Let's say Bitcoin and gold for now. We'll talk about silver in a sec. They've been moving in the same direction at different times. Like, I've been noticing this for a long time. And I always jokingly called it the V2 engine of monetary debasement, right? So when one piston is pumping, the other is pulling back. And when the other one is up, the other one is down. But they're both going in the same direction. We're all bummed out on the Bitcoin side because we're languishing at $90,000 US. Are you fucking kidding me? Right? Like, not gonna make it. We are in a bear market. I've been saying this for a couple of months.
Wow.
The 4-year cycle is bust, and we are in a bear market. My God, of course we're in a bear market. Like, the sentiment is just fucking terrible. This is not, we are not in a bubble right now. We are in a bear market, and I don't know if we're in the beginning of it, the middle of it, or like the end of it. But we're chop solidating at the 90,000 handle. And before, we were chop solidating at the $75,000 handle. And before that, it was 58K. Do you see a pattern here? Right? Yeah, it's just like a stairway to heaven. Gold and silver, I mean, yeah, they have been waiting a long time. And this is not like, I'm seeing people going, okay, I'm taking my profits. It was fun, guys. I'm out of silver. I'm out of gold. I've been in gold and in silver like since the late 90s, and I'm not selling here. Like, no, that's not the reason why I acquired this stuff, right? This, to borrow another one, Larry says the big print, Lynn says nothing stops this train. Well, the train's fucking going, right? And nothing's going to stop it. Like, we're going to see $5,000 gold within weeks or a month. Like,
not even. I bet you it's like next week.
We're practically at $100 silver, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I broke down some historical ratios of previous bull swings, and if you get to $10,000 gold, you could, and the silver gold ratio goes to 10-1, which has happened a couple times in the past. You got $1,000 silver, right? Do you sell then? I don't know. Like, and then I tell people, sell when you have something specific to sell for, right?
Better idea.
Like, it's like, okay, now I'm gonna pay off my mortgage, or I'm gonna put my kid through school or whatever. That's when you sell. But this whole, oh yeah, I'm up 3,000%, I'm gonna take profits. Yeah, I get it, but I'm not gonna do it, because I don't see gold, silver, or Bitcoin really going down to like a secular low for any of them is going to be like a higher plateau each time.
I agree. And I also think that there's becoming, I mean, if there's not one already, there is slowly forming an element of too big to fail in Bitcoin, and probably also crypto more broadly. Again, because you have a group of the population that was and maybe is in a lot of ways destitute. They don't have investments. They're not invested in the stock market, which is a big reason why they want to do these like Trump accounts, right? I guess I won't call them Trump accounts, call them Dell accounts, since it was Mike Dell who, apparently pioneered the idea. And his goblin wife, absolutely atrocious looking woman, which I hardly ever say on this show, but I have to mention it. The problem is that these people who are destitute normally don't have skin in the game, and so don't care if things go up or down. They actually enjoy a downswing because it makes them feel like they got one over on the upper class, right? They finally got a jab in at the bourgeoisie. The problem is now these people are all holding crypto tokens in Bitcoin. And so like you cannot have this stuff fall. So what do? The natural answer is you buy for a reserve under the guise of these are the assets we want to hold, and it keeps the price high. And you use that printed money at a rate that, much like the 2% inflation rate, is noticeable but not concerning. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it seems to me like it's more and more likely. Trump gets asked questions all the time about debt. And the first thing he says is growth. And the second thing he says is we have some other things that we're thinking about. It's hard for me to believe that they have not at least given some thought to, could we buy Bitcoin or talk about Bitcoin in a way that makes it feasible as a debt repayment vehicle? It would be a huge, huge issue all over the world. Like if you thought Greenland was bad, buying Bitcoin and paying the US debt down with it would be like a nightmare for that administration in terms of their popularity. No more dinner party invites for sure. But on the side of economic prosperity, yeah, you might find yourself in a better boat with that, which is why most of us are buying Bitcoin. I want to talk about one more thing before we go. I want to talk a bit about AI. You're in a spot where you're kind of on the vanguard. You're a tech entrepreneur. You own a business, DNS. You guys are using a lot of these AI tools there. And we were talking at lunch on Monday, and we're trying to use them at CBP. I'm trying to use them at work, but I'm sort of just learning how to do this stuff. And you've been doing it for a long time. You're doing the vibe coding now, and some of the other application and let's call it time-saving activities with all this stuff. Is this the panacea that people think it is? It seems to me like in the last month, the runaway speed at which people are commenting and tweeting and threading and leaving these essays on Twitter about how vibe coding is the thing that's going to separate you from the eternal unwashed masses in the next generation of wealth accumulation is astounding. Is it really this thing that people should be like singularly focused on, or are these people out of their minds?
I think you should. I think everyone who has the ability or the wherewithal or the means should be doing as much AI work as possible, including vibe coding, whatever. It's an interesting question because this thing is moving so fast and it's disrupting everything, right? There was a great YouTube talk. Angela sent it to me. Maybe I'll give it to you. Put it in the show notes.
Sure.
It was a guy, I can't even remember his name, but he gave like a 30-minute talk about how execution is no longer the bottleneck. And so he says that the big misunderstanding with AI is that people think that AI removes the bottlenecks, right? But nothing removes the bottlenecks. There is always a bottleneck. It's just AI moves where the bottleneck is, right? Here it is. I'll pop it in the thing. Execution is cheap. Here's what matters now. Oh, I can't do it in the public. Can you put it in the public thing?
I'll put it in public chat. Yeah. Pop in the private
there.
Share it.
And so, and it's funny the way he talks about corporate culture, that he says like so much of the workflow and the processes in corporate culture are these sort of ritualized risk reduction systems.
Totally.
Right? That are completely disrupted now that you can vibe code something in a few hours. So now you don't have to do PRD, task force committee approval.
PRD is what again? Product requirement document?
Yeah, product requirement doc. I mean, you use PRDs for vibe coding, but I mean, like in normal software development, a PRD could take like 6 weeks to put together, right? And you'd have a committee to do it, and then a sign off, and then a milestone. Whereas now, you just vibe code the prototype, and you kind of like show it and say like, this is what it looks like. This is what I think it should do. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a functional prototype. So, it's blowing my mind at how fast this is all moving, and so I really, I call it like future shock after the book from 1970, and I made up my own word for it. Well, actually, ChatGPT helped me make up
oh no
called tachyosis, right? Which is future shock squared, right? Because it's accelerating across multiple dimensions and they're all compounding on each other. So what endures during that? Where do the bottlenecks move? Like, it's still too early to really tell, For me, I've written about this a couple of times. I had almost an existential like panic, not really a panic. It was just a very jarring realization, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, when I realized that in the future, like DNS is pretty future proof. No matter what happens, right? Endpoints are going to have to be able to locate each other across the web, and they're going to need a level of abstraction to do that. But in the future, more of our customers are going to be agents and bots than people, right? And I've been talking about the X402 protocol, which makes micropayments possible, which makes agentic, autonomous micropayments possible. And so, there's going to be influencers talking about, I vibe coded something in my underwear at the kitchen table that makes me like $5 every 5 minutes through agent, and I don't even have any human customers, right? Like, those are the kinds of headlines we're going to see. Yeah, it's just, it's mind boggling. Like this, I think if there's anybody who's still saying, AI is a fad, like anyone who's in Paul Krugman mode, like the internet is about as important as the fax machine. Like, yeah, this is, you couldn't be more wrong to the exponent a million. Like this really is. And I was skeptical at first when I first started playing around with it. I'm like, I don't know, seems kind of retarded to me. It's not very smart. And then, and now I'm kind of like, shit, even when it's wrong, like it's still wrong a lot, and it can be infuriating a lot, and they're not infallible. Like they, people get tired, people make mistakes. Well, so do AIs. AIs get, their context window fills up and they can't make inferences anymore, and they just do really stupid things. But it happens at such a blinding scale.
Yeah, there's a good comment here I'm going to put on the screen. If you can vibe code, this is from Maxwell's equation, so I've not seen it on this channel before, so welcome, sir. If you can vibe code, so can AI. Your vibe coding ability is irrelevant. This is in the same vein as what I said to you the other day, that there's people who think that productivity is going to go up by 50% for people who are coding. And what I said is, if there's 3 of us and my productivity goes to 150% and your productivity goes to 150%, then that other person's out of a job. There's not infinite expansion of work and available tasking. It's one person out of a job. And I think this is in the same boat. Is it true that it's going to be perfect? No, like you said. But the thing is that it's almost like you're commoditizing skills that even a year ago, people were saying, oh, you're going to have to be a prompt engineer. Well, prompt engineers are dead now. You know where I get my prompts? I get them from AI. How do I prompt you to get this result? What is the thing I should be saying? Give me some keywords, give me some ideas. And it does. And then you're speaking the same language, right? Yeah. And I don't think people realize that the white collar burn down of institutional jobs, like busy work jobs and quote unquote knowledge jobs. If you open Excel at your job, you are in trouble. If you're responding to emails, if you're monitoring an inbox, if you're gathering data and making inferences for someone, you are in trouble, because this thing is not going away. These models are getting better and better. And I think there's going to, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years. You mentioned UBI earlier, and we can wrap, here, I'll just get your final thoughts. UBI, AI, the failure of institutional faith, we'll call it, or the disappearance of institutional faith, and governments who just no longer have the tools to keep up with their citizens. This is what a fourth turning looks like. And it's funny, we kind of started the conversation talking about some of the stuff that seems far away and is maybe not so far away. And now here we are at the end of the hour, and you basically have all the ingredients for the cocktail. The question is, what's going to be the straw that stirs the drink? And it might just be a conflict between the US and China. And once you get there ain't no going back.
Yeah. Okay. Again, a lot to unpack in there, but the one phrase, I love that phrase. If you open a spreadsheet, you're in trouble, right? I mean, my shorthand for it has always been, if there's an SOP, you're SOL, right? because you just turn the SOP into Markdown and put it into the thing. To the comments that like AI can vibe code, the important thing about that, to do it, to produce something of value and quality, 2 things. One, you need to be able to communicate well, right? There's I can never remember his fucking name. He gave a Y Combinator keynote, and he said, I want to say Karpathy, but I could be.
Karpalus, Mark Karpalus, probably, maybe.
Yeah. And he said, in the future, the #1 programming language in the world will be English, right? So it's the ability to communicate ideas. And 2, you really do need deep subject matter knowledge of what you're vibe coding.
Yeah.
Because the AI is not perfect, and it will never be perfect, because even as it gets better and better and better, the complexity will get more and more complex. You have to be able to communicate what is wrong, right? In a rational, like in a coherent way. So
that it understands, not that you understand.
Yes. So but you have to be able to understand what is wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So to vibe code, you actually do know how to code. Like, I guess this might be a really clumsy analogy. When I started playing guitar, I wanted to go straight to an electric guitar, and it was like sort of like Karate Kid wax on, wax off moment. It's like, no, you got to start with a classical guitar for a while. How long's a while? I don't know, 5 years, right? I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. But I did it, right? And when I could finally do it in an electric guitar, I was okay at it. So you have to have the knowledge of the underlying subject material to be able to vibe code well. Otherwise, you get some of these shit shows that you and Len talk about on AOE, right? And that's easy. Of like, guess what? They vibe coded it, and it started posting credit card numbers to Twitter, right? What was the second part of your question? Like
just whether, like whether or not like we have all the ingredients. Yeah.
So UBI is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
So you and I and the Bitcoin maxis and all the economically literate people can argue till we're blue in the face that UBI doesn't solve anything. It will be inflationary. It will instantly raise the poverty line to whatever the UBI level is. All of that is true. And all of it is not going to make a difference. That UBI is inevitable and it's going to come sooner than we think. And I think with the midterms coming this year in the US, I think it's going to be a big election issue.
UBI.
Yes.
Why do you say? I mean, it seems almost too soon. Like just infrastructure wise, it's too soon to roll something like that out. But I agree with you.
They won't roll it out. I mean, it won't be ready, but it's going to be a talking point. It's going to be like, okay, everybody's hydro bill is up 60% this year because Anthropic and ChatGPT and fucking Microsoft Copilot and 60% of the white collar jobs have been nuked in the first 6 months of the year. And this ain't getting any better. It's accelerating. What are you going to do? It's going to be a UBI conversation.
The midterms are going to be telling for a lot of reasons. It's going to be a referendum on Trump for sure, like always. But the bigger story is it's going to be a referendum for those flyover states that Trump has done such an effective job campaigning for. And there is no doubt that the data will show they are further behind now than they were 2 years ago.
Everybody is.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I did catch that he said at Davos was like, inflation is beaten and everybody's
2%.
living is coming down. It's like, yeah, in what fucking world are you living? Well, I guess if you're asset rich, that's true.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, it's going to be a fun year. Thanks for your time tonight, Mark. Tell people where they can find out more about you, EasyDNS.
EasyDNS.com. Use the CBP media coupon code.
Yeah.
Bombthrower.com for my off the books rantings. And I'm Jeftovic on X now.
There you go. Yeah. God bless everyone. Thanks for coming. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Take care.